So today we're looking at Luke chapter 20, verses 45 to 47. So we've come to the end of this chapter, which really, for the religious leaders, these ongoing conversations would have been pretty brutal. I mean, they would have really struggled, I think, and definitely did not coming out looking very good. And Jesus at this point, we're told by Luke in chapter 45, it says, while all the people were listening, Jesus said to his disciples. So he turns to the disciples now. Probably any religious leaders that were still hanging about breathe a sigh of relief. Finally, the attention is off of them. And Jesus turns to the disciples, and then before they can even really get a breath out, the religious leaders are just under attack again, because Jesus begins to list these things and says, you don't want to be like them. What he says about them is, beware of the teachers of the law. They like to walk around in flowing robes and love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and have the most important seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. These men will be punished most severely. It's just really not a good day to be a religious leader. They've gone through all of this back and forth conversation, and then here they come, and Jesus is basically just laying them bare and saying, look, this is who these people really are. You see, he's come into the temple, or he's had these conversations near the temple, and again and again and again, he's pointed out the kind of religion, the kind of faith that these religious leaders have been trying to push on to people for many, many years. He's dealt with the fact that they've wanted to profit from their faith, that they've wanted to build their religion around themselves and around looking good and not really having to be accountable to anyone other than themselves. That they haven't built their faith on the foundation of Scripture and on Jesus as their cornerstone, and that they have a real lack of understanding of what it even means to follow Jesus, to be one of God's people. And then on top of all of that, if all of those things weren't enough, Jesus sort of goes through this list that they're prideful and they're greedy and they're showy, and they again and again and again showing the emptiness of their faith. And essentially what Jesus says is, don't be like that. I mean, it couldn't get more simple. But really, I think it goes two ways. In one sense, Jesus is saying, don't become like them. Don't have a religion that is a religion, but actually have a faith that has substance and depth and that is built on a solid foundation. But also, I think there is a responsibility that Jesus is given, saying, don't follow leaders like that. That if you are a part of a church or a community of people, that we are meant to hold our leaders to account. You're meant to hold me and Alex and Kevin and Allie, your small group leader, your deacons, your elders. You're meant to hold us to account. You're meant to say, look, we're meant to be like Jesus. We're meant to be Bible saturated. We're meant to love God and to love people. And we're held accountable as much as for who we are as who we choose to follow. As a leader, I'm accountable for the kind of leader that I am. And Jesus has a lot of things to say to people who choose to lead. There's a great responsibility in there. But I also think Jesus gives some responsibility to who we choose to follow. That he's telling us to be wise. He's telling us you can't just throw up your hands and say, oh, well, I didn't know that they were doing, that we're held accountable to say, who is it that you choose to follow? Do they seek to emulate Jesus? Are they building their lives on the foundation of Scripture? Are they saturated in the Word? Does their authority come from a spiritual authority of this is what God says, and they're attempting not only to know what God says, but to be obedient to it, to live it out? Can we see that in the lives of the people we follow? And if you're a leader, then maybe like me, you have that little bit of trepidation, that reminder that there's a standard that we follow, that we are meant to, like Paul, we are meant to invite people to follow me as I follow Christ. That we should be seeking to be more and more like Jesus, and we should not be following the example that we've seen here of these people who take advantage of others, who are looking only for their own interest, who put on the appearance of someone who's following God, but actually their faith is empty. That if you pressed at all, it would just collapse because there's actually nothing underneath. There's a real sense of accountability in the conversations that Jesus has, and it works both ways for us as leaders, but also as we follow, that we hold our leaders accountable, or at the very least that we say, I'm not going to follow someone who I don't believe is fully following Jesus.